What is up, Cyrus Khan? You are officially on the Vinamra Kasana show in the quarantine edition that has to do with what the fuck to do with your life when you're indoors and your body is dying, decompressed, all of that shit. First of all, man, thank you so much for doing this. It's been quite a long time coming. We've been acquaintances for I think the last 2.5 months. I had the privilege of coming to your studio, that is Mumbai Movement Academy. I hope I'm saying that right. Um, and it's just been a roller coaster of things since then. You have been probably the most active practitioner of parkour that I know of, at least on my Instagram here in India. And then you're also, how do I say it, helping spread the handstand movement all across Mumbai and India as well. So it's a real privilege to have you here and discuss, as I suppose, all things movement and then things that extend beyond that finite discipline. To sort of start things off, man, how did you even get into parkour? Like when I think of parkour, the first thing that comes to my mind is Assassin's Creed, and I always envied that ability for the protagonist to shimmy up ceilings and all kinds of windowsills and just make movement as if the human body does not have, as if it runs on an endless tank. That's what I would describe it.
You know, whenever I get a first impression about parkour from people, they always, for some reason, have this idea of it being this super extreme thing. But if you look in the natural world at any other animal, what other animal do you see just spending the majority of their day sitting in one place? Name one.
Except for a sloth, but I think even a sloth.
I was just about to say, other than a sloth, what other animal? I think the default of the natural world is really to be constantly on the move, moving around, fast, slow, like what in ways that I think any human would consider like super extreme. But then that's the natural state. And I think that's very true for humans as well. Even for the majority of their history, humans didn't sit around just waiting for stuff to happen, waiting for the delivery to come to the door, and just all their work being in one place. I think it's pretty evident from what results that if the human body is given all the movement nourishment that it needs, that it takes care of itself rather than having to sort of artificially take care of it through whatever else you may need, like fitness and exercise and stuff. The entire idea of like parkour and the rest of the movement paradigm is just like maybe spend less of your time screwing yourself up so that you don't have to spend even more time trying to fix it. So to answer your question of how I got into parkour, it was very simple. I mean, I was young, I was a kid, I was interested, I liked moving around in fun, and what kid doesn't like jumping and doing flips and stuff? But I couldn't do that. But one day, just surfing around the internet, you saw this video of people who were doing amazing things with their bodies. I can send you a couple of these clips, which like if you watch, you're just like, how? When you watch a Jackie Chan movie, you're just like, how? But just as you feel after every Jackie Chan movie, it's like, yeah, I'm a martial artist like today. Now, I got it. I just watch him and I got it. That's sort of the same feeling that we had. And the only difference was we just went out, probably looked like idiots, but who cares? And just tried jumping on stuff, climbing, and you'd be surprised, but the current capability also that pretty much everyone has, if you just go out and do it, is still pretty cool. It's just everyone's super held back by their fears and everything else surrounding is social judgment, like what will people say to me if I climb up on this wall? Who am I like to climb up on my table? It's like all of that weighs people down. And if that didn't, I think more people would have access and already do have access to more movement than they can imagine.
That is, I mean, I can go in a billion directions from here because you talked about social judgment. You talked about, just looking at your heroes and wanting to emulate them, and just the ability and free ranging freedom that teenagers have when they gather with a bunch of their friends, to sort of experiment with whatever is outside in their environment, right? But what's interesting is that I see this now. Before, I didn't see this as often when I was growing up. There is a tendency for parents and even for kids to essentially be risk averse when it comes to playing with their bodies. And I'm not talking about sexual exploration. I'm more talking about like the idea of venturing beyond the 5 into 5 workout of a gym, to sort of it's like they don't consider it a video game. They don't consider like there are objects to be picked, there are objects to be meddled with, things to be climbed on, things to be jumped on. And in fact, I feel like there is not a lot of impetus to do that because the idea of the social judgment comes in. I will look like a fool. This is for monkeys, that sort of thing. But I found, even working in the confines of your studio, for the few times that I was there, that there is a certain amount of resistance that the brain puts up, that your ego puts up, your neurotic holding patterns put up, that this is wrong, that this movement isn't meant to be. You save resource. You're out there in survival territory. This does not make sense to do that. Once you push past that,
Honestly,
yeah.
Vinamra, you shouldn't be so hard on yourself because a lifetime of social conditioning has been like what you've been through to create these thoughts, and that doesn't get undone just because like one or two guys give you a fancy speech. Like it won't go away that easily. It takes time, but once the more you're exposed to this narrative, the easier it'll become. And the more you start to push the boundaries, the more freedom you will find. I'll give you the classic example of my mom, who, like, whatever, 50, 60 years of conditioning of what it was like to be, like, not only like a person, but a woman and all those other sexist presumptions that fall on top. And like, despite having me in the house spouting my bullshit like 24/7, it took her like maybe 6, 7 years into my practice to finally start to buy my crap, and actually like work on herself. And today, like, she does handstands at the age of 60 and like finally agreed, like, is loving hanging on a bar or swinging, even though initially she's like, no, I can't get these calluses on my hand. My hands have to be soft. Like, it's a non-negotiable. And now she comes up to me and she's like, I hate you, I have them, I hate you, I have them. But she still does it. And she's the only 60-year I know that can do a push-up on the ground. And like, what other like specimen can you bring up as an example? Really, hardly.
Yeah, especially not in India. I wouldn't say so. I mean, I also have a grandmother, and I think her physical exercise starts at walking in the park and ends right there. That's the amount that she's allowed herself to go into. But sort of to backtrack things a little bit, because I feel like we are not addressing some very key issues here, which is, could you tell people who you are and what is it exactly that you do?
Who am I? I'm just a guy that jumped on some walls for 10 years and now other people ask him how to jump on walls.
I appreciate you being so humble, but what I mean by that is because I was looking at your CV, and you've done a lot of stuntman work for an odd number of commercials and Bollywood. And then you're also this scientist guy interested in physics, like doing particle research. I mean, I'm not really sure what I skimmed over it, but the point is that these are disparate interests, and you somehow bring them together. And my mind is racing with questions. I mean, is there like, I don't think there is a field guide of what you do, right?
Not really. The stuntman business is sort of the easiest to explain. We were the first generation to really like learn parkour in India,
Yeah.
and take it to a level where it was pretty apparent to anyone who watched that, wow, this is amazing. That it was just a natural like skill set that allowed us to like portray what like people in films and ads want to portray, which is this like amazing, explosive, flexible, whatever, and it just became a tool that we could use quite easily, and that's what the industry wanted, and we just were in the right place at the right time with the right skill set, and we got a bunch of these jobs, which you'd find actually this is not normal stunt work as well. Like normal stunt work is actually just more like, you see the Rajnikant type fighting and stuff like that. So this is more sort of specialist parkour work that we managed to carve out a niche for. That was pretty interesting to do. It's very hard to do as a full-time job because the jobs are not rare and not stable. But if it's something you're doing on the side, it's pretty nice because like when you do get good opportunities, the opportunities are really good. And you work on interesting stuff. And one of the big motivators for me is that you get to put out the same kind of like awesome media that can inspire other people and reach out to other people who don't directly look for parkour stuff. But like a lot of people say the first time they saw parkour was just Akshay Kumar in a Thumbs Up commercial, and they didn't really know what it was, but they just saw him doing some crazy stuff like jumping off a building and things like that. And that's where they got the idea from. Like way more people will watch a Thumbs Up commercial than will ever see a parkour video, which is why I guess from an outreach point of view, it also makes sense to do.
Absolutely. You mentioned we. I saw you mention we. Is there a larger parkour community based in Mumbai? Are you guys connected? How does that work?
Oh, there we go. That is Mumbai Parkour. That is the organization that we created essentially because we all really were interested in something, and it's always nice to create a community to gather around and to feel connected through. And so Mumbai Parkour was founded by Rishi Prasad, stamp his face here, Deepak Mali, stamp his face here, and also mentioned Giles D'Souza, stamp his quads here. The three, four of us essentially were the few people from the early practicing community who sort of got together and were really interested in developing the sport, the discipline, so that more and more people could, find people and friends to practice with, learn more about it, and interact with an existing group. Because the way we started, we sort of all did it more or less on our own. It was kind of a lonely thing, whatever, it was exciting enough. We went through it. But Mumbai Parkour was born out of just this desire to have a group of people who could be there and have, like, you could share your interest with.
What's the easiest way to start parkour from jumping?
Get out of your house right now and you jump down the stairs.
That's it. When you say jump down the stairs, you mean a flight of stairs, more than 5 or 6?
I mean, you just do it bit by bit at a time. But you've seen how Jackie Chan goes down the stairs, right? He slides down the wall. Maybe he'll skip a few steps. Maybe he'll turn. It doesn't really matter. The problem is right now, there's so much parkour media out there that people are scared or like don't feel like starting because they can see how much they suck. The good thing about us was like we didn't even know or care how much we sucked. We just started and we just went on for years like that with no, I would say very little regard for how we look. Because, we weren't constantly comparing ourselves to, like, we didn't film every day. We didn't have to produce content every session. And we didn't have to worry about that. We were just, in some ways the kid mentality helps. People think it's good to be a kid and start parkour when you're young because whatever, physical gifts and all that. But really it's the mentality. It's that I don't give a shit what anybody thinks about what I'm doing. I'm just going to do it because I like it. And that mentality is the key to starting. You just got to go for it because you're going to be shit for quite a long time. Really. It's really not even worth showing. Like even your mom will be like, why would you do that?
Right.
And so no one's going to back you up. Maybe your friends who are just about as equally shit as you will encourage you. Those are the only people that you should go with. But I think if people want to start parkour, or they just want to have a body in the future that's capable of doing stuff and moving around, I was writing an article just today about how, like, be the friend that all your friends sort of want to have by their side when the apocalypse comes. You want to be that guy. That's like, or who the apocalypse coming. Who do I want with me? It's like, oh, that guy, parkour guy.
Yeah. Is it because of your moral standing? Or is it because of your physicality?
Bit of both, maybe. Parkour is a lot about, it's not just about the physicality as well. Very good question. Because parkour is one of the few disciplines that really, I think, addresses to a very deep level why you are doing what you are doing. It's not just to become a jock, it's not just to like, yeah, check out my backflip, bros. As soon as you get into parkour, you will come across a very strong philosophy of being useful, being really like being a contribution to everyone else with the skills that you have. Because why do you bother, being able to do all of this if you're just gonna use it for your own sort of self gain? Like at the most, whatever, people will applaud you. Then what? What's the point? What's the point of putting all this effort and time? And when you actually are able to use what you have gained to help other people grow, whether it's by teaching them and helping them develop their own bodies and confidence and things like that, or in some scenarios, not very often, but there are like the emergency scenarios are there where you can use your skills to like help get, classic stuff like cat out of a tree, business like that. But more often it's just, like the most common use is like getting balls out of people's gutters and terraces and stuff.
But I mean, yeah, but still, nonetheless, I think
like that.
Sorry,
Yeah.
go on. You were going to
I
finish.
say when you go through something like that, that really is a transformational experience because you feel like, okay, wow, all the effort that I've put in and all the skills that I've gained are useful to other people.
Yeah, I feel like what happens in contemporary times is that knowledge workers rely far too much on their brains and their ability to solve complex problems using their intellect. What often gets missed in this equation is you use the same person to solve a problem that is happening in the real world, the physical world, and their muscles might be frail, they might not be as flexible or agile with their body. So it's like it's that real sort of yeah, he's good, but he's only as good as the solutions he can conjure up for a specific task. Like what I mean to say is he's not well, like you can't rely on your I guess PhD political science professor dad who's like extremely obese for something that requires rushing her sister to the hospital, getting her down a flight of stairs that is like three flights. He can't do that. And that's the sort of thing that I think allows that's the sort of thing that happens when you foster a connection with the body, when you make it as agile, as flexible as the feats that I've seen at your academy, which I was dumbfounded by. In fact, the first day that I came over, I was, I had all those limiting beliefs about what my body could do. And by the end, although I was dying, I was like, Cyrus, this is great. My body has somehow like unlocked like the next level, like the next upgrade DLC pack that only like is reserved for the few who can pay the money. So it's a really refreshing feeling to be able to not only use your head to solve problems, but then also use your body in a way that makes you an ennobled figure for the community, if you will. Now, in terms of that, you also have the background of a scientist. What is that about?
Yeah. So quickly before we get into that, I do want to tell you it's been half an hour that we've been on call now. And so you should move your legs around a little bit.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Because I feel it very naturally. Like you can probably see, like I've changed my sitting position probably just because like after a certain point, like the body, if it stays in one place in one form all the time, is like the muscles that are holding you in that way are going to get fatigued and you're going to rest in bad ways. And that creates problems. So I think it's a crime to go a half an hour without just getting up, shaking your hips, moving around a little bit. And we shouldn't be hypocrites sitting here for an hour chatting without obeying those same rules.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel.
Cool.
Yeah.
What do you feel?
I feel that it's kind of weird because podcasters do sit around for hours. Even like the best of us, the most even Joe Rogan has like this 3 hour podcast. That motherfucker does not move. Even though my all said is
You
at
know
the
what?
end.
Like some peak experiences, it can be excused. Like I know Joe Rogan has some interesting times, and he trains his ass off on the other side.
Yes, he does.
Like when you're quoting a million people each episode, like waggling your torso can be distracting. But we aren't burdened by that fame, so we can.
Of course.
So,
We have the privilege of the underdog. But yes, coming back to Science. Yes. What's up with that?
What is up with that? I just think it's the most like amazing way of looking at the world. I was lucky enough as a kid to have a mother who was a science professor and who introduced me to science at a young age. And I obviously didn't know exactly what it was in that regard, but it was enough to get me, like there was enough good exposure to get me hooked throughout my childhood. And now as I see it, science literally is just learning how to think in a way that you are the most likely of being correct. That's about it. It's the process of thought that allows you to evaluate anything that's going on in the world anywhere and examine it and come to conclusions that are the most likely to be correct based on the information that you have. Notice I didn't say anything about like chemistry or biology or anything. It's nothing to do with mugging facts. It's nothing to do with, it's not of the natural world. It's applied to the natural world.
Right. I mean, I have found on many occasions though that science does tend to fail at answering some questions about metaphysics and existentialism. We can get into that discussion, but I do find that you're right about science being able to solve or at least get to the closest approximation of a solution that would be justified by many people, because it does have, I remember reading this in like a science book in 8th standard, like a systemized body of knowledge that can be used and the hypotheses can be verified by processes of trial and error. But I generally think that science is not capable of getting answers like, what do I do with my life? I don't think that can answer that.
It doesn't have to. Science doesn't have to have all the answers, and it doesn't.
Right.
The important is it doesn't claim to have answers that it doesn't have data for. That's fine.
I'm not saying that I am anti-science at all. It's just that
no. I don't believe that you're anti-science either. Like, don't worry.
Really fun. If this would be a way more fun conversation if I was anti-science and you were like all about science. We were just like steel manning 2 arguments and trying to see which one wins. And I would, probably laud some kind of other, and like, some pseudoscience, maybe like religion. I would do that. But I still think that there is something to be said about having a science degree. You have a degree in physics, and then using your body to make something magical happen. Do you ever at times feel like this is something you want to continue doing professionally, maybe become a researcher? Like, what do you have for your plans when it comes to parkour? Because like I said before, this isn't exactly a field that has a clear guidebook. It's not like, step A, step B, step C, step D. It's sort of like you're just there with your body, and then, you put a camera on, shit happens, you get paid by people to teach them to be as flexible as you are. Like, what is the next progression for you?
I mean, why does there need to be a guidebook, right? Remember, this is all, again, the conditioning coming out. It's like a career needs to have a roadmap and a ladder and this and that. Why does it need to? I think one of the things that I've learned in exploring this particular path is that there's absolutely no necessity to really be in a system that has a very well-defined guide map. And I think that's the limiting thing. It's like people are searching for freedom inside the most well-organized maze that they know. And
Interesting.
it's,
That's a very
yeah.
interesting way to put it.
And why do you think you'll find freedom there? The idea of just doing science and parkour for again, it seems really unconventional or backward, or I mean, just confusing or convoluted. But why wouldn't you be interested about nature and the way the world works, and also care about your body and how that works?
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on that. The only reason I asked is because it's one of those things that
It's rare.
It escapes the imagination of the average person, right? I understand it completely because I have some very far-ranging interests that have absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. And that's the sort of question I ask myself also. In fact, one of the critiques that people in my life give me is that you're not specializing. You should specialize now. You should pick a niche. I'm like, you have no idea. I want to have as much broad set of experiences as possible, and then finally hone in when I want to. And there's enough data to prove that people who specialize later on are far better, especially in the world that we live in right now. Considering that we're in the midst of a lockdown, that so many people, the lives that they've known, the businesses that they've had, the blind trust that they've placed on the world as they know it is no longer there. They have to adapt. They have to be able to switch from a field that they specialize in for upward of 30 years and say, in a smack of a second, okay, you're going to do that now. And that level of flexibility really comes from, being able to hold disparate extremes constantly, and then saying, I also do this, but then I also do this, and then letting people fill the gaps, letting people miscontextualize you, whatever the fuck they want. But you also, you go home with the experience of, I tasted everything in life. And that's why I feel like that's how your life becomes an adventure. And no matter what happens, I mean, you might suck at a lot of things, but at the end, you're like, I got the full palette of human experiences. Not everyone can say that. Yeah, that was just a fun little aside that I had to do, considering that.
Remember, you have to, the fact of like being able to like specialize, I think people specialize sort of way earlier than they need to. I think the metric for specialization is really simple, and it works. For me, I've always pursued a wide variety of interests, and I keep picking up other small things as well. But the times that I've specialized are pretty much only through interest and through time. So to give you an example, I did a lot of other things relating to sort of, debate, public speaking, drama, theater.
Yeah.
When I also played football.
A very elaborate CV with all the prizes that you won in almost every single competition.
I really need to do something about that. That was a project I made in 10th standard where that was the rest of my life.
But it's really interesting. It just shows how competitive you are. Yeah.
Actually, I wasn't competitive at all. I was never competitive. I never actually.
Cyrus, there are prizes for first runner-up, prizes for second prize in debate, for creative writing competitions. I was like, this guy really, and I related to that because I had like upward of 300 certificates coming out of my second grade. Not to fucking brag here, but it's like, it's that you just want to say what you've done. But please go on. Yeah.
So the idea of, I think, specialization just becomes. It comes naturally when you pursue something to a depth, and you can only pursue something to a real depth when you're super actually interested in it. Now you can fake that interest or be forced into like putting enough time to specialize in something. But I think when natural specialization comes in is where you find something that you genuinely don't mind and enjoy putting in the real, like, there's no way to sugarcoat it, like real horrible like hours and repetitions it takes to become actually good enough to go deep and specialize in it. And I think that's where most people sort of falter, because they assume they have to specialize first without finding what that thing is that they can tolerate, like slogging through. And then they end up in that, and then they slog and they don't like it, but everyone's just telling them, oh, you just got to. And then there's all that time invested already, and then you have that sunk cost mentality. Is like, oh, I already sunk 6 years of my life into this, might as well sink the next 36, and exactly, it sounds ridiculous when you put it that way, but a lot of people feel like that. They feel like, oh, I made this weird decision to get a business financial management consultancy degree because that was the cool thing at the time, and now I guess I have to do this for the rest of my life. And people feel pigeonholed like that, and I don't blame them, because pressure is hard. And I think the only way that we've been able to escape it to a certain degree is, let's face it, by being stubborn, hard-headed idiots who like really enjoy going against the grain of other people. Tell me that's not true, Vinamra.
I mean, as you were saying that, I was just mentally having a smile in my head. Because I think we all operate with the assumption that we are static instead of assuming that we are dynamic, which is truth. We are very dynamic. The other day, since I have a degree from a foreign college, my mother made this very snarky comment. She's like, what are you doing with that X amount of dollars spent in your degree? Making funny videos on Instagram? Is that what you want to do? And I mean, as much as that as a rebuke to how I can spend my time, it's like, I had so much fun making that video. So it just shows to prove that the narrative to specialize early on, to somehow justify the amount of time you spent in honing in your degree, is pervasive, even in the best of societies. It's very funny. This podcast was initially called the Vitruvian Man podcast. The Vitruvian Man was the drawing that Leonardo da Vinci made about the architect Vitruvius, who basically said that if you want to understand the symmetry and measurement of the universe, understand the human body first. And Da Vinci was a guy who was all about integrating the arts and the sciences, and I was really inspired by him. Still am. Have some of his principles written down on my wall, and that's when I really started to see like what parts of my brain / my body am I just leaving out. What parts am I heavy on? What are my weaknesses? Things that I've never done. Like, for example, I had such a massive aversion to doing anything sciencey, because I was always fed the narrative that you're creative, you're supposed to create, right? And it's like, as soon as math and science came, I'm like, not for me, because the narrative doesn't fit. And as I'm 23 right now, as I progress through life, I'm like, there are some genuine blind spots I could fill if I just get in touch with science. And which segues into a lot of what you do. It's about filling those blind spots.
Yeah, it's also about working. As you just said, it's about being aware of like what you are, like what your dogmas are and what they're excluding, right? Even from the point of view of like, if you think back, for me, I went through that classic stage of being a hardcore science brat, and like the full-on atheist types, like everything religion is wrong. And everyone goes through their teens like that, and I think it's fine, like to like really self-identify with a particular thing. It almost inevitably leads to the exclusion of everything else. But then I think you can very easily come out of that with enough maturity to see that religion was around for the last 50,000 years, the majority of human history. Why was it so pervasive, and why is it even still around? What did it do? What is it doing? Why is it doing what it is doing? And once you can see that it basically is like, the fact that everyone, whether they know it or not, needs some sort of philosophy and sort of personal mental reassurance. Religion was basically this sort of easy to feed philosophy that everyone could get behind, that was easy to understand. Like, the average person can't read Freud and Nietzsche. Like the
Yeah.
average person needs something simple, but then also answers their questions about, like, because everyone does have basic questions about life, meaning, morality, and stuff, and everyone needs answers to those questions. And religion was just something that came up that filled those holes for that as much as they needed to be, and helped them go on with the rest of their life. And I think now that I see it as that, I think there's nothing wrong with having that. It's just now that you have better things to fill it with, maybe do that.
Yeah.
But like you don't have that same aversion, that same vindictiveness that you did when you just sort of hated it for being the thing.
Yeah, I remember the first thing that happens when you're 13 and you have an English education and you find some kind of semblance to Jim Morrison / rock and roll anarchist ideas. The first thing is, let's abandon everything that my parents have, taught me, society has taught me.
Yeah.
And then low resolution anarchist ideas like fuck society, fuck all of this, fuck the police, that sort of, those sort of ideas, fuck religion, fuck God, those just come in and you just feel the surge of dopamine. You're like, oh shit, I am something. I am this anti-establishment 13-year-old. I'm listening to my music, I'm pumped up. But then, as you grow up, you start to realize that something very interesting that you pointed out is that the reason why some structures stay alive for so long is because there is something eternal in them. And that eternity is passed on through generation to generation to generation. And whatever that is somehow being deemed by all the humans across time as useful. I'll say the same thing about science, even though science is fairly recent. Once 10,000 years from now, maybe like someone in the future would see this and say like, oh shit, science is still alive because we all deem that as useful enough to not let die. Or at least even with religion and with science, people strip down all the bullshit and just keep the essentials. One thing very interesting with religion, now that I think about it, is I think it allows people to find a model of behavior. It really allows them to understand how to behave in a world where there are incomplete rules, how to fill in those gaps and do it in a way that it almost points them toward noble goal. Yeah, that's what I feel about religion as a way of behaving, because there is like,
Vinamra, we're in a world with no rules. There are no rules in this.
it's a wicked game.
That's the
It's not
entire idea. And you see the way, again, animals eat each other every day to survive.
You do you follow Nature is Battle on Instagram?
I had a phase where I did. After a while, I got the point.
Yeah, I like that. So
I actually only follow maybe 10 to 15 people at a time on Instagram, no more.
I see. Is that a specialized thing? That's very weird.
It's just we're clearly in a time where we're constantly flooded with input, and I would like not to be. I'd like to make the best of
what. Cheers to you for grabbing your freedom like that. Some people will say they're offended by it. It's like,
yeah, a lot of people, all the people I unfollow are definitely offended.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad the mute exists, because you can pretend.
I'm a religious follower of the mute. The mute has saved my life on numerous. I've muted almost everyone. I can count the people I actually see on my Instagram on the palm of one hand, which is about 5. And you're so right about that. It's the idea that somehow being able to manage your time online and the influx of information is considered a crime, because almost everyone is high on that.
Because think about how closely you guard your possessions. Like if someone even steals a pen from you, like, shit, damn, why? And when it comes to your time, I think everyone's just like, oh yeah, call me anytime. You can make this. You can create a ringing in my head. You can create a buzz in my pocket anytime you want. And no one's really possessive about their time. Right? Yeah, message me anytime, call me anytime, interrupt me anytime. I found that's a very strange attitude to have for such possessive people about their material belongings. And I've taken a lot more care recently to be very conscious about where you allow people, like whether you're preserving and keeping a little I would just say hygienic, the amount of what information comes to you, and is it in a controlled fashion? How much do you get? Because I feel like it leaves people no room to think for themselves. It's like,
Absolutely.
okay, anytime you want something, you just assume someone else has the answer. People don't give any thought to what they think the answer could be, and that obviously, like any muscle, leads to the deterioration of that muscle, and then people lose the capacity to think for themselves. So then they're just searching for answers in other people and places.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about the idea of boredom. Like, I generally ask so many people, when was the last time you were bored? And they're like, I don't know. The first instinct is to pick up the phone. The massive. Um, the other thing is, and you since you're the scientist here, I'll prick your brain on that. I think our biological circuits are not meant for that level of constant, non-repetitive, chaotic activity that is coming our way. They're just not meant for that. And it's upon us to sort of uh, try to find a way to cultivate habits around our digital activities. Otherwise, it can just be like, your melatonin is running high. You're about to go to bed, right? Your bed is a place where you go to sleep, but then all of a sudden your phone pings, and then all of your systems that have to do with I don't know, alertness just wake up, and that process gets delayed, and as a result you're just constantly at bat with everything that the world is saying. Like, it'd be so funny if you could see everything that your friends were doing, including taking a shit from outside your window. If you were a caveman, I mean, you use the same concept and you attach that to constantly scrolling through your feeds, and you get that it's like, oh, this person is taking a shit right now. Well, I'm seeing that as I'm talking to my mom. It's that weird mix of the physical and the digital world in a way that, like you said, leaves us incapable of even seeing where my life is heading. I don't want to get that dark, but I've just had experiences with people very recently, who I've seen.
Who's taking a shit on your feet, Vinamra? Who is?
Oh, dude, you'd be surprised. I woke up this morning and I was like, let me have some of that morning routine time that allows me to really set my intentions for the day. But then I caved in and I was like, you know what? It's fine. Today I'll do it. And then I just woke up and my friend had sent me a picture of like the zombie apocalypse is here, and this is this guy eating someone else's shit, and it's on a WhatsApp group. So like everyone who had a morning routine that has them checking their WhatsApp saw someone eating another person's shit, and I'm like, fuck, I need to fucking not do that anymore. Um, but fuck, I just lost what that shit was disgusting. I'm just thinking about it right now. Um, but yeah, Cyrus, beyond
Yeah, we have.
tell us about what we can do to optimize the human body better. Let's get Tim Ferriss with this shit.
Yeah, first thing we should do. It's been another half hour. Let's stand up.
Yes.
One of the interesting things that a lot of people also don't realize is that how your body, how much your body and mind are actually connected, and how much of a difference it makes, how much the difference the state of your body makes to the state of your mind. And there are very nice experiments that you can try on your own that can sort of demonstrate what these effects are. One sec, my washing machine's going really loud. I'm just going to kung fu kick my door. All right.
Yeah.
So, for example, one simple experiment that people could try is breathing. Like, how does your breathing affect your state of mind? Let's do an experiment, Vinamra, and hopefully the people who are watching can also do this experiment, because I'm a scientist. No, it's because experiments are the only way to understand something. You just do it. It's very simple. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do something called fast, shallow breathing, which is you're taking a shot
breathing
in with your nose. People who are familiar with not exactly,
okay,
but a little bit of similar to that. Essentially, you just take short, shallow breaths,
okay,
and you're trying to do this for about 30 breaths or so. I just want you to do that. Don't think anything else. Leave
All right,
your
let's do it. Okay.
baggage on the side. Don't expect something. Just do it. This is
Okay.
how science works. You don't want to think of what's going to happen. You just want to, that clouds
All right.
your sense of what's going to happen.
Okay. So
Remember, you see a dog on the road, a car is driving towards it. What's going to happen? Answer quick. Answer quick.
It's gonna kill it.
Okay, that's it. That's all I wanted. Now let's take
what's the idea?
let's take 30 deep breaths. Like so, slow deep breaths.
Okay.
Slow deep breaths. Try to like breathe into your belly. So put one hand like close to your belly to make sure as you take a breath, you're actually settling in to almost your waist, like you're breathing into your hip almost.
Okay.
Let's just relax it. Just don't force the breath as well. Just let the breath happen on its own time. Okay, Vinamra.
What's up?
All right. Yeah, there's a dog on the street. There's a car coming towards it. What happens?
The dog runs away.
Okay. Why?
I don't know. It's instinctive. I think the dog learned from the first time.
But so the idea of this experiment, when you repeat this, you will find overwhelmingly that this pair of answers is well above random. And this has entirely to do, it's the exact same question, exact same person. You haven't changed very much. What changed? Why did you feel like?
I think one is because I got
Don't analyze it. Yeah. Don't analyze
I got centered
why
using my breath, and then as a result, I felt optimistic about life, and I think about the dog as well. I think that it completely shifted what I think about perspectives. The first thing is, you being as real and practical as possible. The dog will get killed, of course, with enough, some sort of magic happening inside. I suddenly felt, the dog has a chance. Life is worth living. That's what I can sum it up.
Yeah, you really took it far there. But I would say it's very simple because, there is actually nothing super real about, the world and how you view it. Everybody perceives the world through their own personal filter And that filter is made of all the thoughts, opinions that they've had in the past, and the mental state that they are in currently. And it's funny that you mentioned the first scenario where the dog got killed being the real and practical one. Because, and why is that? It's only because you spend so much of your time. Now think about in which state do you spend more of your time? Which state felt more natural to you? The real and practical one was the really pessimistic and the one where you didn't feel like there was any positive outcome. And it just shows that we spend so much time in this state of shortness of breath, in this state of like pessimism, that we almost consider it natural. And yet, if we take a little time to allow ourselves just a little bit of calm, that our entire outlook on everything can change. And the world, as you said, looks better, feels more optimistic. This is the entire idea, that in what state our body is in really can change the entire world around us.
Fucking A, man. I'm surprised. First of all, for you really taking us there in this podcast. And second of all, for how true that is. I remember every single time I've managed to keep up with the breathing practice, this happens inevitably. There is somehow that icing on the world that just disappears when you're living in, the shortness of breath, not being connected to your belly, your pelvic core, all of those things. Fuck, I don't want to deviate from this beautiful place that we've come to, but since I do want to get back to the practical for helping people, what ways are we fucking up our posture?
I mean, the simplest one being doing the same thing continuously, like doing just one thing most of the time.
Sitting, sleeping, that sort of thing.
I mean, it doesn't really, like sleeping being the exception where you're just like fully at rest, that's fine.
Yeah.
But the problem being people just spend too much time doing just one thing. And that, there's nothing inherently wrong with sitting. There really isn't. The problem with it is that people just do it for obscenely long periods of time in somewhat suboptimal ways. Think about anything else. Like if you had to choose to do if someone told you, okay, you're going to sit in one position fixed for the next 4 hours, you try to, what would you do? Like what position would you adopt, Vinamra?
The one that you're sitting in currently.
Which one?
Legs crossed, sitting with my arms on the ends of my knees.
But my legs are not crossed.
Oh, you changed up.
So this is the idea. You don't have to, the idea is you try, and most people can't even sit cross-legged normally at this point. Let's face it, pretty much 10% of the population can probably manage to comfortably sit cross-legged. The rest have already been locked into a sort of a spinal posture where they can't sit comfortably in that way. The answer is there is no real correct posture, and everyone can sort of tell what the most comfortable one is for them. But the idea is the simplest way out of it is just don't stay fixed. Change up. I understand. Let's be realistic. People have jobs right now where they have to be at a desk for reasonable points of time in the day. And so you change around, and then suddenly now, whoops, I'm cross-legged.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with let's get one leg up. Let's sit like this for a bit. I feel like parents also criminalize their kids for constantly fidgeting in chairs. But the reality is this movement and this natural fidgetiness is your body's signal of saying, damn, I want to move. I can't sit anymore in this particular posture. Let's do something else for a while. Let's come back to it. But the problem being that we restrict ourselves initially to a particular way of sitting when not realizing, if you just moved around a bit, you would be mostly fine. Then there are simple, do not do's, like super slouching or leaning on something continuously, or sitting on simple stuff. They're all just signs. There's nothing wrong with leaning, but if you lean continuously like you're not really allowing the musculature of your body to stabilize you, and then it never learns that.
Interesting.
There's just simple things. Posture also is something that affects, again, also your mood. I could do another experiment with you
Oh, you
about
mean,
how
if I sit like this, serotonin is low. If I sit like this, the serotonin is quite high. I'm, more confident. And
neurotransmitters, we won't
yeah,
get into weeds of them because they're not as complicated as some of the bro science people. They're not as simple as some of the bro science people like to put
this is
out
not
there.
bro science. I read this in a book by Jordan Peterson about, stand up straight with the shoulders back. That's one of his central rules about, and he uses the neurocircuitry of lobsters to say that if you inject lobster with serotonin, it's gonna stand up straight and fight again. Like the more pronounced lobster's posture is, the more it shows that it's a tally of its victories. So the more depressed the lobster is, the more it's lost a lot of those matches and thus has less serotonin. And he says that human beings run on the same circuits.
Yeah, kind of. It's somewhat true, and it's a good way to convince people that this is what you should do.
So help me understand, what are we missing here then?
I mean, just the fact that like serotonin doesn't work in sort of in a vacuum without interacting with other neurotransmitters as
Oh,
well.
absolutely.
And we won't. That's why I said we won't get into the weeds of neurotransmitters here, mainly because there is genuinely a lot to understand. But it's fantastically interesting. I think it is a crime for people to go their entire life without understanding how their brain works. It's shocking how few people give thought to the very thing that allows them to give thought.
Absolutely.
Crazy. And this is like some of the crimes of school education, where they go through teaching you about like all sorts of crap that you probably don't care about. But they don't address basic things like, how do you cook food, which you're going to have to do every day of your life? How do you, what is your body made of? How do you keep it healthy? Like, I understand people need to know about tax, but also like yourself.
Yeah. Also, they don't allow you to. They don't teach you enough about how to use your body to be better. It's. I mean, I had the misfortune of having physical education as my fifth subject in 11th or 12th grade, because I went to a CBSE school in Faridabad. And when I read the books, the literature there was subpar. I learned more from YouTube. It was badly grammatical, of course, and it has stuff like, nowadays. I still remember this line. It blows my mind. This is all they had written about women and fitness. Nowadays, fitness movement is also gaining traction in India, although women do not care much about their fitness in India because they're cared about beauty. I'm like, what is this? Is this a book about a man's? Is this like about judgment? Like, and they had like weird things like eat like eat turmeric. It's just like it's all
See,
very
thankfully, no one really believes Indian school textbooks anymore, so we don't have to worry about too much.
yeah.
Actually teaching our young this, because let's face it, I know I was in the 11th grade too. I didn't believe anything that was written in my book.
That's true. They should have taught us instead about, like, where do you want your life to go, that sort of thing. You have a life in front of you, as opposed to pick and choose. I mean, they didn't allow us. Fuck, I have so many comms with the school system, but actually kind of weirdly also like it. But coming back to simpler things, apart from ripping apart systems of schooling, postures, right? Still want to address that, because what if people have bad postures? That's a thing that you've often seen, people who slouch. I certainly didn't do that a lot of times. I have a friend who is biohacker, and he says that the if you use a pull-up bar and just hang from it, he says gravity is a natural adjuster for almost all sorts of bone slash postural problems. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen me.
I mean, of course, you are quite the orangutan in your studio.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is definitely one of the, like, there are a few postural things that are the most bang for your buck. I would say if you had to pick two, it would be hanging and squatting.
Yeah. Why squatting though?
And squatting for your hips. Yeah, this one.
Oh, you mean just like sitting in a squat? Okay.
Sitting in the squat, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fact that most people, it's just about the simplest accessible way of like going to like the end ranges and the relaxed ranges of your joints. The problem is the sitting is not the end range of the hip joint. This is very much like you're in complete hip flexion, whereas in sitting you're in hip flexion. And so your tissues are sort of locked in the interim. They don't get to fully contract and fully relax.
Right.
Whereas in standing, you're at the opposite end. You are at, camera catches that. Yeah, you're at pretty much the other end range of hip flexion, where you are fully extended. Hanging is sort of the same. All right, let's squat for a bit. So the idea of hanging is you actually just allow like the pull of gravity to like stretch out a lot of your tissues. Your shoulder basically sort of gets pulled out a little more, and like the actual term is distraction, funnily enough.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the idea of hanging basically allows you to relax a lot of the tissues that you normally keep tight posturally in your back and spine and stuff. So yeah, one of my surefire recommendations along with squatting is hanging. And I've seen incredible stuff. Like I've had my uncle who had a shoulder, like a humerus break fracture at 50 something. And like people usually give up on life and their shoulder at that point.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, I'm 50. What do I need to do with my shoulder? But now, like through consistent hanging, is the only way that he regained his full range of motion in the shoulder. Otherwise, like pretty much nothing else will do it. And you know how people are just usually conservative with their bodies. They just like, okay, let's just lock it up, keep it there. As long as I'm able to put my hand to my mouth and to my ass, I'm fine. I don't need anything else.
The default state is conserving energy and movement.
Yeah, but the problem is adopting an overly conservative approach also leads to issues because then suddenly when you need a little bit of it, you won't have it, and that when you don't have the sort of the margin, the backup, that causes injury and other problems. Right.
That's true. I often see that with people who are elder than me in my own family, and 40s, 50s, that sort of thing. Especially in India. I mean, I've had friends, parents of friends in the US who were extremely fit, extremely agile with their bodies, even at those ages. And there are always exceptions. But that's something I've noticed with, like I said, with all those groups. And what's fascinating is somehow the tendency to walk or the tendency to do, even like the gym for that matter. Like I feel like the gym, even though I went to the gym intermittently all my life, it never really gave me a sense of strength. I mean, testosterone rising, good emotions, all those things. But it never really gave me this sort of, for the lack of a better word, the aha moment, like, oh shit, I can do this with my body. It's more about like, well-defined boundaries of movement that you repeatedly to gain muscle, and then you flex with your bros, that sort of thing. But you are jacked in a very non-conventional way. I mean, did all of that come as a direct byproduct of parkour and movement, or do you actually work out?
So parkour and movement has always been like the driver. Like, why are you even doing all this stuff? Like gymming and bodybuilding takes a hell of a lot of effort. Why are people doing that? For some people, it is just vanity, and they should at least get around to admitting that it's vanity. They just want to look better, and by looking better, they feel better. And there's nothing wrong with feeling better, right? As long as people are like clear about why they're doing it. Some people are doing it for health. I think that's the wrong approach for health. Like there are much better ways to acquire health than bodybuilding. Um, if you're just in it to look better, and by looking better that way you feel better, and you're willing to put up with the consequences of doing it that way, which there are many, then fine. That's an okay choice to make. Why I put all the time into do like other strengthening exercises, which when looked at from a normal perspective may look like gymming, which is fine. I also do push-ups and pull-ups and stuff, but I strengthen myself to be able to do more movement, to do more parkour, because that's what I find fulfilling. And that's why I'm willing to put in the effort to do all of that. And it keeps me healthy in my chosen like vocation, in what I choose to do. I feel like people see exercise as an end in itself, which it almost never is. It's pretty silly. Like people have just made a business out of the act of exercising, which is pretty dumb, because it's usually an end. It's as a means to a goal. Like when if people don't know what their goal is, they can get stuck in the self glorification of just pumping up biceps. But that also doesn't last for very long.
Yeah, that's true. Cyrus Khan, I would like to ask you a question that is has nothing to do with fitness or movement or any of the stuff we discussed, but has everything to do with who you are as a person. What was the last purchase that you made under 5,000 rupees that has really revolutionized your life, that has been really helpful?
I am not a very heavy purchaser. I'm a very minimalist with my materials and things. But I'm going to overshoot your boundary by a little bit.
Sure, please.
It's about 8,000 rupees. But a couple of months ago, I bought a bicycle. And so where I live in Mumbai, I'm going to move out of the squat now and back to sitting. And I recently bought a bicycle because I have two areas of operations. Like I live in Grand Road, and roughly 10 kilometers south of that, I have a bunch of work. And then Andheri, which is 20 kilometers up north, which you need to take the train to go to, I have a bunch of work around there. So I was just not happy with the way I was moving around the lower 10 kilometers. That constantly involved like I used to use a lot of public transport as a kid, but then the problem was when your engagements become very cut, you have to start, like you can't wait around for buses and things like I used to do. So you'd have to start taking cabs. And I just wasn't happy with that because one, it was more sitting. And two, it was also not great for the environment if you keep taking like private transport. So this has been something I had planning for a while. And now that I had some carefully segregated work and errands and small commuting to practice and stuff on this side, just bought a bicycle. And it has by far been the best expense this year because of not only the economy of it, because it's super cheap. Now I don't have to pay for cabs anywhere. I have already made back the cost of my bicycle in terms of saved cab fares. But I also just tremendously enjoy moving around now because it's under my own power. I enjoy I'm a physical guy. I love the physical activity. I also I won't lie, I get a kick out of being, like different in another way. Like, okay, he's a good guy that commutes on the bike. And a lot of times, especially in traffic hours, which is most hours in Bombay, I am faster than any other mode of transport.
Yeah. I definitely can relate to that guy being weird with his quirks because when I was in college, I used to have a scooter. Like that scooter that you've...
The scooty, kick scoot.
Yep. Yeah, the kick scoot. Yeah, the razor shit. And I used to commute with that to college. My college was like about a mile up from where I used to live with the worst, most dangerous drivers in the world. And I would just use the bike lane and the bikers would pass me by. But I'd be like, fuck yeah, I'm just like, riding my scooty. And the best part was getting uphill because it's just like, it's not like a bike, at least with a bike, you're just like sitting on the seat and pedaling. With this shit, you can't really like rest one of your feet on the platform because you constantly have to pedal and then get back on the road, pedal, get back on the road. But the declines were amazing. It's like riding a skateboard. It was just whiz past people. It's just like, and like it's like that moment where you're like, the protagonist is entering. Quite a great thing for your mind and for your vanity. But before we sort of end things off, what is one thing that you would like for people to know, that like a unique perspective that you have on movement, life, whatever? I mean, clearly you are a very fascinating individual since the time that I've met you. What is one thing that you would like people to know and then potentially follow and or look at differently?
So many things. I think the most basic one would be, just maybe give some time to yourself away from all the stimulus that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that I've really changed my mind on more recently and started putting more and more emphasis towards, which is, we spend so much of our time to work, like catering to outside stimulus, that we just don't have any room in our lives, in our days left for just our own thoughts, our like feeling our own body, doing something with ourselves. So I'd say I try this as an exercise. I guarantee pretty much everyone will fail within a week. It is the simplest exercise in the world, but I guarantee you, Vinamra, I don't even think you could keep this up for a week unless you tried really hard and it's really bruising your knees.
Challenge me. What's up?
Take 10 minutes every day, just away from every other input and stimulus, every single day, just 10 minutes.
Yes.
Put a timer on and then like throw your phone somewhere away. Don't look at the time at any point during the 10 minutes.
Sure.
I would say the easy level is just, do whatever you want. Don't like interact with anything else. Don't read anything. Don't watch anything. Just listen to yourself. See how you feel. Like maybe you want to, don't lie down and sleep. That's another thing.
Yes.
That's the easy way. And the harder level is if you really want a challenge, just try to sit or stand. Stand is the easier one. And don't do anything for 10 minutes. Just stand still for 10 minutes. You will fail in a week. Whenever I have high expectations of you, but you will fail in a week.
Challenge accepted. I initially thought you were going to say meditate for 10 minutes. I was like, I've been doing that every single day the last
No. Meditation has all this baggage with it. I don't recommend people start with meditation. I just say, just practice taking 10 minutes away from everything else.
To be bored. You're essentially saying just stand and...
Not even to be bored, to just allow yourself to listen to all the stuff that's coming from inside, because your body's constantly saying things. You will feel, you will know stuff, but the problem is you just never give it time to be listened to.
Fantastic.
Then you will feel like doing whatever else. Like everything comes from internally. Like me telling people to do a certain number of squats or push-ups or pull-ups, it will only work for a limited number of time. Until they feel like they need to do it themselves, like it's not going to happen.
I have my work cut out for me. The next 10 minutes, right after I end this podcast, will be dedicated to this. Cyrus Khan, man, I am fascinated. This is one of the most fascinating conversations I've had this year and on this podcast. Thank you so much for being on here. If you would like people to follow you, which I'm sure people do, where can people find you?
On Instagram, I guess. Yeah. I'm not. I try to be a reasonable communicator. I usually fail just because I find other stuff more interesting, but I will try. Cyrus Khan PK is my Instagram handle. My website is cyruskhan.com, which I always hope to do things with, but again, usually end up going and jumping on some walls instead. Yeah, those two places, I guess. That's all I have.
Fantastic. Yeah, you guys can check out his work there. The website is quite memorable. You'll have the glimpses of the guy who always came first in class when you check out his CV on the website. I had a fun time looking at that. Um, but yeah, man, thank you so much for doing this. And yeah,
All right. See you soon in class. See you soon moving, Vinamra.
yes, absolutely. I hope this quarantine business gets up ASAP and then back at it again. Awesome.
Oh yeah, we have. You're still on the movement class group. We're
I am.
posting some
Yes.
home workout stuff. You're still part of the class wherever you
Oh
are.
yes. Also people. If you're in Mumbai or you also do workshops all across India, right? Handstand workshops, that sort of thing. You might want
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the main thing that you should do is probably visit the Mumbai Movement Academy. Like if you're a town and you think Andheri is too far, like screw you. Come on.
to.
Just because honestly, when you are among a group of people who think this way, it's a lot. Ask Vinamra. It's a lot easier to like
Absolutely.
understand what the entire thing is about. I also take some classes in town at this place called Studio 23. I teach hand balancing a lot currently, just because it's a really cool thing that people are super interested in right now, and it's a really good way to start to break away the barriers of like what you think is possible for your body. I think most people just write themselves off as they can't do it, but my class, my handstands class, is filled with the average age is definitely above 30 in my handstand class.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not even joking. The average age is definitely above 30. We have some late 20s, but we have late 30s, and we have some 40s as well in my class in town. And the main reason is because they all sort of didn't think it was possible, but a lot of them just came and like, okay, I'm just get stronger and stuff. And lo and behold, like 2 months later, they're all like, no, I'm going for the balance. Let's go. And it's a lot more accessible as a skill than most people realize.
Yeah.
Gives people that feeling of, wow, I can still do amazing things with my body. So I recommend it as a good starting point.
Fantastic. I mean, that's a great way to end it on. Do more things with your body and you'll surprise yourself. Cyrus Khan, I will see you in Mumbai when the apocalypse ends. Bye-bye, man.
All right. Bye. Thanks for doing this, Vinamra.
Thank
I really appreciate like the fact that, when you see someone consistently doing pretty much anything, it's a good sign that they have the capability or the understanding to be able to pursue something deeper. And like you said, like we realized, specialization comes naturally when it's something you're interested in. It's like, which 15-year-old guy doesn't know the absolute ins and outs of Pokemon Go, like they'll tell you stats, they'll tell you like which Pokemon you find where. Specialization is something that happens everywhere. It's just about then later on being able to translate it to something of value. But that's a process that comes inevitably when you dig deep enough.
Fantastic. Thank you for the kind words. And toodaloo, I will end this recording and then we'll have a post-podcast chat.
Okay.